Welcome to the show. Here, I speak with experts and experts at life in heartfelt conversations designed to help us pause, choose intentionality over hustle, and discover joy, meaning, and connection in our everyday lives.
High stress, anxiety, and sleeplessness, they're sort of these three ends of a triangle and they always go together. So you could begin with any of those and invariably the other two would follow. This entire decade is sort of the age of the microbiome where there's a lot of research and emphasis into the gut brain connection. And this is what Ayurveda spoke about thousands of years ago. We are made to believe by different social media that there's a magical bullet for anxiety, that if you buy this particular supplements, it's the wonder cure to a problem, and that's very, very concerning. One of the things I always ask people is that would you try to piece together your financial planning with bits of information out in the world of the internet? You'd never do that, right? Because you're so cautious of your money. You'd always go and look towards an expert. Quick fixes do not work. Maybe you're hopeful of that. Maybe you think I don't have the time now. But there is clear evidence from many, many startup owners who are succumbing one moment at age 35 and 40 to a heart attack, fatality, that we know for a fact that we cannot biohack our way out of this sort of a life. So we have to prioritize some level of slowing down. We don't eat only carbs or only proteins, right? I mean, just as we need various things in our diet, we need various things with our exercise regimes. And while I teach yoga, I do strength training, I walk, I swim, I get a wide range of these movements because each of them does a different thing for you. Swami Shivananda used to say an ounce of practice is worth a ton of theory.
Thanks so much, Deepa, for making the time to come talk to me. Welcome to the show. While I was sort of researching you, I saw that you have expertise in several areas related to health, be it functional medicine or Ayurveda or yoga or sleep or women's health. In your practice, when you look at your clients, what are some of the top health issues that you come across, and what do you think are the reasons for those?
I think probably if you was to say top three would be certainly anxiety, gut issues, and metabolic challenges. And I think most of them come from a space of high stress. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
high stress, anxiety, and sleeplessness, they're sort of these three ends of a triangle and they always go together. So you could begin with any of those and invariably the other two would follow. So for example, maybe you don't prioritize your sleep enough and then you'll end up with the inability to handle high stress and then eventually some form of anxiety, maybe not as what might be diagnosed as an anxiety disorder, but anything related to excessive worry, ruminating thoughts, fear over unknown aspects of life, and then, of course, full blown aspects of anxiety. So, I think
Mm-hmm.
anxiety is pretty prevalent everywhere today. And naturally, if you have anxiety, then you have trouble sleeping because you wake up at certain times of the night and then you're unable to fall back asleep because maybe whatever was not seeming as scary during the day in the middle of the night appears to be more so. And then, of course, gut issues, every form of it, be it a simple gas bloating, which many people just seem to keep aside as not a big deal, which eventually can end up as much more severe gut issues where you can't absorb nutrients, so you may show up as having a lot of nutrient deficiency or indigestion overall. So, I mean, there's so much, this entire decade is sort of the age of the microbiome where there's a lot of research and emphasis into the gut brain connection. And this is what
Mm-hmm.
Ayurveda spoke about thousands of years ago, that The gut is at the center of everything, and therefore it is bi-directional. What that really means is, there's a lot of thought in different systems of medicine today as to whether psychology follows physiology or physiology follows psychology, and I think it's absolutely both ways. So you
Mm-hmm.
cannot address something in the mind like anxiety without addressing the physiology. Similarly, you can't really improve the physiological conditions without addressing the stress, coping, the how you deal with stress, calming down the nervous system. So for sure, resolution of anything, be it a psychological symptom or a physiological symptoms, need resolution from both perspectives.
So one of the things that you are talking of is this connect between the mind and body, and this is actually going to be my next question. This is, do you think this is well understood among the layperson? Are they addressing it the right way? What is the holistic way to really start addressing health overall?
Well, I think, if we were to look in terms of people who are trying to resolve, I think a major roadblock for everybody out there is that the health world itself is it's shifting to a business oriented approach. And what I mean by that is that, there's a lot of information on health out there today. It's so easily accessible. There is certainly the very concerning aspect that not everybody who's talking about health today is a health qualified expert. So, this is a major problem because the lay person really cannot discern, because
Mm-hmm.
using AI and using business coaches, business mentoring, anybody who's not a health expert can put information out, but they may not be able to have a nuanced perspective. And therefore, people who are trying to puzzle piece their health using little bits of information from this infinite plethora of information out there, it can hit them quite badly because they're not being understood for what is unique to their body, their constitution, what are their habits. So, really, it's a very deep approach. We are made to believe by different social media that there's a magical bullet for anxiety, that if you buy this particular supplements, it's the wonder cure to a problem, and that's very, very concerning. So I think really, like, one of the things I always ask people is that, would you try to piece together your financial planning with bits of information out in the world of the internet? You'd never do that, right? Because you're so cautious of your money. You would always
Mm-hmm.
go and look towards an expert. So I think this is a big problem. So if you can't, I mean, obviously not all levels of healthcare, even preventive, is accessible to everybody in terms of monetary investment. But if there are
Mm-hmm.
excellent books, so I think even if you're not trying to explore working with somebody, it's very important that you look to an expert, be it from just buying a simple book versus looking at social media, because this is a very big problem. So, mind body connection is spoken about everywhere, but it's not fully understood in its nuanced aspect. I think
Mm-hmm.
what's really relevant and pertinent is that we have to understand the body and the mind, and of course understand that the two are connected, but we have to understand these two separately as well. For example, I had asked somebody who was working very actively in the space of depression once, and I asked her, how is a diagnosis of depression made? So, for example, if a woman goes to somebody, is she diagnosed after being assessed in any way?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe nutrient deficiencies, maybe hormones. And her answer was very quick to come that these are all adjunct and they come afterwards. Now, this is a real injustice to the patient, because you cannot diagnose somebody with depression or anxiety when we are looking at the mind without looking at the body. So, what do we
Mm-hmm.
need to look in the body? For example, to assess any mental health condition, you need to go into the body. You have to assess the state of the gut, the digestive health, what's happening there. Are they able to absorb nutrients? If they can't, if they have poor gut health, they'll never be able to absorb and utilize iron and B12, which are key nutrients in mental health. Then we
Mm-hmm.
need to assess nutrient status. So, for example, what is the levels of iron, what's the level of B12, and it's not as simple as just pumping somebody with a injection of B12, because when you do that, you're bypassing their body. You have to get to
Mm-hmm.
understanding why is their body not able to absorb these nutrients. That's very important. Then, of course, status of a key nutrient in mental health is omega 3. Now, omega 3 is divided into three: ALA, EPA, and DHA. Now, ALA is found in plant sources like chia, walnut, flax, but EPA and DHA are only found in fish or in algal sources. However, a very common misconception is that I'm taking flax oil for my omega 3 requirements. This is a lack of understanding. You can't break down an omega 3 into just a flax oil, because that only gives you one component. Now, not everybody may need to have a fish oil. I'm not saying that you cannot be a vegetarian or something, but it is important. For example, if somebody is very passionate about going down a vegan route, that they work with a qualified health practitioner who can actually assess, are they able to be a healthy vegan and introduce the
Mm-hmm.
right things that can allow them to walk that path long term. Because one of the most common problems that occurs with going plant based is initially you feel very good, because maybe you're shifting from a very processed diet to eating more vegetables. So everything appears to be wonderful. But long
Mm-hmm.
term, when you start depleting your resources of omega 3 and B12, then over time people start to feel uneasy, then they develop anxiety. And I've seen time and time again clients who come with high anxiety or depression, and maybe 4 5 years ago they've decided to go plant based, but they haven't done it the right way and it's tipped them over the edge. So it's
Mm-hmm.
important to assess these aspects of the diet. Then, when you're looking at physiology, you also have to see the body constitution. So, from an Ayurvedic perspective, somebody, for example, who has a tendency for excess vata dosha, and I think high vata can show up as anxiety disorder. High pitta can show up as diagnosis such as bipolar, anger issues, inability to regulate anger. High kapha can show up as depression. Now, these are not physiological psychological conditions. Like, you can't just diagnose somebody with these conditions without understanding is their body severely off balance. So if you have somebody
Mm-hmm.
with high vata and then you diagnose them with anxiety and put them on anti-anxiety medication, over time that medication is going to further increase this vata dosha, and eventually they're going to tip into severe imbalance. So you have to understand that person. So no two people with depression have the same physiological root causes. No two people with anxiety will have the same root causes. So it's very important that each person is understood as to what is the sum of the different root causes that's causing imbalances. So this is about the mind. So never ever diagnose something to do with the mind without looking at the body. For example, how is it relevant to diagnose somebody with anxiety when they are not sleeping properly? So you first have to go and fix that sleep, right? So how can you diagnose somebody with depression when they are perpetually sedentary? They're not at all moving their body. So there's so many aspects to this. Similarly, if you have physiological conditions, something to do with the body, let's say severe gut issues, maybe they are being diagnosed with conditions like IBS, right? And then you haven't understood that their nervous system is in chaos. Maybe they are just
Mm-hmm.
unable to regulate their nervous system. Then no magical supplement is going to restore the balance. No fancy pill is going to, there is not a single superfood that's going to fix them until they learn to regulate the nervous system. So I hope this covered a little bit about how mind and body are connected, but it's so highly connected that we cannot diagnose in any one area without looking at the other. Neither can we resolve any one area without looking at the other.
No, this was super helpful, Deepa, and I'm sure there's a lot of depth there. And maybe in the show notes we can put in some more information on, what you speak about, your books, etc. There are two things that I really picked out from what you're saying. A is definitely move towards experts in this world where there's so much plethora of information, bits and pieces coming from AI. We know AI hallucinates. It's important, even if one does not have the monetary wherewithal to go and speak to an expert, there are definitely books that one can refer to which have good reviews, which are coming from an expert led point of view. So that's what one needs to prioritize when it comes to health. And secondly, whatever health issue it is, it's important to get a full systems perspective, whether it is a mental issue or a physical issue, just to ensure that you're going to the right kinds of specialists. And maybe it needs to be two kinds of specialists as well. So even if it's a depression, it's not just a psychiatrist but also some other specialist who looks at the overall physiology of the body and then work together to try and solve these issues. One of the other things that is very very big in our culture today is the hustle culture, right? So everyone wants to do some things quickly, aggressively, get results very very fast. In this context, I've also seen people trying to get healthy fast, right? So you're hitting the gym and you want to sort of work out incessantly without any break, and that also can be problematic. What's your take on this? So people trying to look at health and getting to it quickly.
Okay, so for this, I think we do need to go back to understand the doshas a little bit. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
Vata, Pitta, Kapha, the three doshas, and Ayurveda believe that there are five elements in nature. So there's space, air, fire, water, earth. Now these elements come together in different ways to form the doshas in the body. So space and air is Vata, fire and water is Pitta, earth and water is Kapha. Now, everybody has all three of the doshas, but they come in different permutations and combinations. How they are combined at conception decides what is called prakriti, which is the unique body constitution. So somebody who's predominantly vata will have a tendency to be leaner. Somebody with pitta will be little more medium. Somebody with kapha will have a tendency to be bigger bone, bigger in structure. It's
Mm-hmm.
very important to understand these doshas. And Prakriti is the body constitution, it decides our tendencies, but Vikriti means the present state of imbalance. So, which means we could be any constitution, but our Vikriti could be different any point in time. So, I could be a Vata Prakriti, but today I may have imbalance in Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. So, this
Mm-hmm.
is why you assess somebody at that point in time and make out what is off balance in the person at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Ayurveda also said that Vata, because it's got the qualities of air, right? So, air, what is air? It's very quick moving. So, Vata is responsible for everything in our body that is movement. So, movement of food through the GI tract, movement of the nervous system, movements of our thoughts, our breath. Similarly, it is believed that we are now in a very Vata predominant age where there's too much of stimulation. So there's
Mhm.
movement globally. So everything
Mhm.
is in a state of movement, and therefore, as a world, we are today Vata aggravated. Every single person today is Vata aggravated because we are bombarded by stimulus every moment in time.
Mhm.
And this is aggravating. Now, when you say high vata, we need to also understand that from a science perspective, because sometimes somebody who is not familiar with Ayurveda, when you say you're having high vata, they may not relate to what does that mean, because it's an
Mhm.
esoteric concept which is hard to understand very quickly. So when we
Mhm.
say high vata, what are we saying? Science calls it sympathetic dominant, being in fight, flight, or freeze, right? Where the
Mhm.
nervous system is tipping into being overactive, where we are always in a state of emergency, that we need to deal with the threat every moment in time, and our body and our nervous system doesn't know how to calm down. This is
Mhm.
what is called high vata dosha. Now, when you say hustle culture, we want everything quickly, that is the restlessness that Vata dosha brings. When our nervous
Mhm.
system is in excessive fight or flight, we don't have patience. We don't have the ability to be calm and to wait. And we know from science and research that healing of body and mind only occur when we shift into a parasympathetic state. Now, research has
Mhm.
shown that when we are in fight or flight, it's like we're running from the tiger. The body immediately shuts off non essential functions, which are digestion, immune function, and reproductive function. So, if we are always in high stress, our body doesn't know how to digest food. It
Mhm.
doesn't know how to have a strong immune function. That means we'll keep getting sick all the time. Autoimmunity, colds, coughs, infections, fevers, and we will have poor reproductive function, which means women will have low estrogen and progesterone, men will have low testosterone. So we really
Mhm.
don't have the ability to reproduce. And that's not just to birth babies, we need the hormones for so many other things. For example, a woman with low progesterone will always have anxiety, because it is progesterone that triggers the brain to release the neurotransmitter known as GABA, which is allows us to feel a sense of zen and calm.
Mhm.
So when we say this high vata, all we're talking about is we are not able to shift from sympathetic to parasympathetic. If we can't shift to parasympathetic, we cannot heal. So you can try your very best. Quick fixes, the most expensive supplement. All you're doing is you're allowing business models to cash in on this trend, because they are
Mhm.
telling you a subliminal messaging that if you don't buy this particular supplement, you're not going to get healthy. So all you're doing is
Mhm.
sort of falling prey to that system, and health is not that, it cannot be fixed so quickly. However, you do the simplest of things. You don't need to spend any money. You could do something as simple as switching off your phone every day by 6 p.m. and
Mhm.
allowing yourself the space in your mind to calm down. And that can be done consistently, and it will provide you 100 times the returns more than any supplement, right? So, really, we have to take this away that quick fixes do not work. Maybe you're hopeful of that. Maybe you think, I don't have the time now. But there is clear evidence from many, many startup owners who are succumbing one moment at age 35 and 40 to a heart attack
Mhm.
fatality, that we know for a fact that we cannot biohack our way out of this sort of a life. So we have to prioritize some level of slowing down. So I would tell everybody, if you don't change anything, don't change your food, don't change anything, but start turning off your phone by 6 p.m. Give yourself, your mind, the room to know that it's safe. Nobody's
Mm-hmm.
out to reach you, nobody's out to get you. That can be the most powerful hack you can do for yourself ever.
Right. No, this was super helpful. I mean, I'm trying to imagine if I can switch off my phone at 6 p.m. and I think it's possible. If I mean, it seems hard, but intuitively it sounds like the right kind of thing because there's so many notifications. You're constantly sort of getting buzzes and pings on your phone, and shutting that off and having a few hours of calm before you go to sleep does definitely seems like the right angle to go to. You were also talking about the sympathetic and the parasympathetic system. While I don't have any expertise on any of this, but what it was making me think, and I'm going a little bit back in terms of physical health as well. A lot of the conversation today is around doing a lot of weight training and cardio, and all of that is definitely required. I think it is important for women, especially when they're nearing their late 30s, 40s, to have weight training in their exercise regimen to ensure that there's muscle mass. But it's also much cooler than something like yoga, for example. What is your point of view in including yoga in the overall health regimen of someone who's probably doing, let's say, cardio, weight training? Where does that fit in?
Well, I think, it's a little bit like how we don't eat only carbs or only proteins, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
just as we need various things in our diet, we need various things with our exercise regimes. And
Mm-hmm.
while I teach yoga, I do strength training, I walk, I swim, I get a wide range of these movements because each of them does a different thing for you.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
one thing I just wanted to clarify, because you mentioned how women need strength training because we're losing muscle mass. One aspect of that is strength training, but a lot
Mm-hmm.
of that is happening because women's gut health is so compromised that they're not
Mm-hmm.
able to even absorb and utilize the protein that they're eating effectively. If we
Right.
cannot utilize the protein, we will lose muscle mass. So remember that all hormones in the body are very much linked to digestive health. Ayurveda says that if you have good Agni, which is what modern day says is good digestion,
Mm-hmm.
only when you have good Agni will you reach the seventh tissue in the body, which is called Shukra Dhatu, which is the reproductive tissue. What modern science calls as estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. Now, in order for anything like muscles to be developed well, we can't simply do only strength training. We need to have excellent digestion. We need to have good
Mm-hmm.
quality protein that is correct for our body constitution, because protein is not just protein. Every body will digest protein differently based upon its tendency towards a gut health, which is different from another. So, gut
Mm-hmm.
health is important, therefore, hormones are important, then muscles matter. But I think we do need a wide range of these movements. However, there's a caveat there. For example, a woman who is struggling with a lot of anxiety and sleeplessness, maybe this is not the time for her to begin strength training because she's
Mm-hmm.
already overactivated. In that
Mm-hmm.
case, a better place would be to begin with things like swimming and yoga, which allow her to first regulate the systems where she's sleeping. So keep in mind
Mm-hmm.
that anything which is going to disrupt sleep is a big problem at this moment in time. That doesn't mean it's bad for you forever. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
at this moment in time it's not the right space to begin. But yoga is something, swimming, yoga, and walking are universal. No matter where you are on your health journey, there is a space for these three movements because they do not upset the nervous system. So I think that if you are a bit unsure, and there's a large amount of anxiety in today's world, which means I have had to stop a lot of clients from doing strength training and HIIT workouts because
Mm-hmm.
they're not sleeping properly, they're waking up with high anxiety. Then I have to say that there is no way you can restore balance unless you quit this for the moment. But yoga is not going to do that. You you, swimming's not going to do that. Your water is a super balancing element when it comes to anxiety and sleep. So just being in the water is great. Walking is very grounding. Same time, running is going to increase anxiety for somebody who has that tendency. So it's as simple as understanding where we are right now on our health journey, right? So if you are struggling with anxiety and sleep issues, we need to keep the strength training out. But your question about yoga, I think every single person can do yoga at least 2 days a week. Even if you are not in that population which has got anxiety and you're able to do strength training, I think even then the yoga can be a balancing movement to counter the activating effect of strength training.
Understood. So I think one of the big things that I'm taking out of what you're saying is there's so much nuance to
Yes,
one's
I love
individual
that
health.
word. I love
Yeah.
the word nuance. I'm always talking about health is nuanced.
Right, right. And so it's so important sort of not to go behind what the trend is and run on. Everyone's doing strength training, so let me also go and do strength training. Like you're saying, it's so important to figure out where you are in your journey. If you have anxiety, if you're not getting enough rest, it's probably doing worse for you than giving you positive results. And it's so important to
Or start
understand
with
that.
a lower weight. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes what I hear a lot is that if somebody starts with just 1 kilo weight and they're doing a little bit of strength training, somebody who's been in strength training for a while, friends will usually tell them, oh, is that all you're doing? I'm lifting 10 kg, I'm lifting.
Right.
We are not kids who need to be susceptible to peer pressure. And how
Mm-hmm.
can we tell our children not to be influenced by the world around if we are succumbing to this? And we
Right.
need to, I think, if there's nobody you listen to your body's cues. Listen, your
Mm-hmm.
body is so much giving you feedback. It's perpetually talking to you, which is what we say intuition. So
Mm-hmm.
practice intuitive health, intuitive eating, and I think listening to your body, okay, knowing today I did this and it upset my sleep, today I ate this and it upset my gut. That's
Mm-hmm.
all we need to do, really.
So this is bringing me to a question around making space to listen to ourselves. I think in our busy lifestyles, that becomes very, very difficult. Where you're just you waking up in the morning, you're looking at your emails, you're rushing to work, you're coming back, and then you're still looking at emails, you're probably spending some time with your kids, and the day just rushes past, and you have had absolutely no time to unwind and just, I guess, calm down and listen to what your body is telling you, what your mind is telling you. What would your advice be? Some practical tips. One you already alluded to, which is to shut off your phone earlier in the day, but anything else that can allow people to make some space in their life for introspection?
Very simple habits. It could be just delaying looking at your phone when you wake up in the morning. That's a big one, right? Because we are waking up very quiet. And I'll give you an example. I was away for 2 weeks and I just returned yesterday. But I was at
Mm-hmm.
a writer's retreat where not a single room had a television. And I've
Mm-hmm.
come back and I can see a massive difference that I don't feel like switching on the television and I don't feel like overactivating myself. I'm sleeping 10 hours the last 2 nights because I'm just so slowed down, right? So I think these things play a very big role. So even if it's delaying, right? Not waking up to the phone alarm, right? And then the moment we put your phone on airplane mode so that you don't wake up to see red notifications on email and Facebook and Instagram, because it's sort of your brain perceives that as a threat. It feels like
Mm-hmm.
you are needed and you don't have the space to be quiet and in that bubble of safety that sleep has created. So
Mm-hmm.
certainly delaying that. And I have a 12-hour switch off window for all devices, 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. I'm inaccessible on my computer and my phone. So it's
Mm-hmm.
about communicating to that to your work. It doesn't happen overnight for sure, because you need to set your boundary before you can tell
Sure.
somebody and make them implement that. And I think also having, there's so much about circadian rhythm today, but it's a bit confused because we are made to believe that some of us are the night owls. There are
Mm-hmm.
books that are validating this aspect that, I'm meant to work in the middle of the night, and there is
Mm-hmm.
nothing further from the truth. If you are feeling overactivated at night and feeling I do my best work at night, it because your adrenal function is in a state of imbalance. It doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
you're a night owl, it just means you're activated. That's
Mm-hmm.
why there was a research which was done, which took a population camping for 3 days with no lights and no devices. And people who thought they were the night owl realized they fell asleep shortly after sunset. That tells us that we are influenced by the light. So, if what Ayurveda says is that do not wake up too late in the morning, as the sun is
Mm-hmm.
coming up, you should be awake. And do not eat too far after sunset, because if the sun goes down, Agni goes down, we can't digest our food. And
Mm-hmm.
then just try to get to bed before, you should be asleep by 10 p.m., which is what Ayurveda calls Pitta Kal, where the fire comes up, you're thinking too much, or you'll have midnight cravings. What modern
Right.
science looks at and says, if you're awake beyond 10 p.m., cortisol is starting to spike, therefore, you won't be able to fall asleep. So,
Mm-hmm.
maintain sleep rhythms, try to keep the same bedtime on weekdays and weekends. Don't shift that far
Mm-hmm.
as possible. Of course, we all have one off days where maybe, we are. Have some event and we have to go out, that's okay. But for the most part, we need to maintain these rhythms. Also,
Right.
regularity with our meal times. It shouldn't be that one day lunch is at 11, one day at 3 o'clock, one day at 2:30. We need to be fixed. I think
Right.
these are core foundational things, but with a powerful return on what we put into it. So it could be
Right.
as simple as this, just regularity of meal time, bedtime, wake time, switching off. Vata dosha is said to love routine. So having
Mm-hmm.
a routine and a structure to our day is one of the best ways that we can regulate our nervous system.
Right. We're speaking so much about sleep, and again, I'm going back to hustle culture. There's so much pride in saying that I work for 16 hours a
Yeah.
day, or I slept only 4 hours and I'm working. So it's worn as the badge of honor, saying that I'm working so much, not getting enough sleep. Or it could be that the day has been so stressful that there's this concept of revenge sleep procrastination, where you're saying I've had such a tough day where I've not had a breather, therefore I will not sleep and probably scroll on my phone or watch something which will let me unwind. What is your view on this? Could you help clarify why sleep is so critical to our health?
Oh my goodness. I mean, that is such a deep conversation. So, sleep actually is, one of the things somebody asked me, why did you write your first book on sleep? And I'll tell you
Mm-hmm.
that. So, in the world of functional medicine, it was told that for everybody to be healthy, you need to have blood sugar balance, you need to have good elimination, and good sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Ayurveda said ahar, nidra, and brahmacharya, which means
Mm-hmm.
food that is tailored to the individual, brahmacharya, which is sort of a regulated sexual response, and good sleep. So I noticed that this merging point of science and ancient wisdom, when it came to good health, the common factor was good sleep, which highlighted
Mm-hmm.
to me how critically important sleep was. Right,
Right.
so there's so much sleep does. First of all, sleep is very much intertwined with our digestive health, which means a poor night of sleep will mean that we have compromised digestion. So we could end up with indigestion, gas, bloating, heartburn, all of it. A
Mm-hmm.
night of poor sleep increases ghrelin and reduces leptin. Now, ghrelin is the hunger hormone, leptin is the satiety hormone. What does this tell us? That if we don't sleep, we, without realizing ourselves, will be reaching out for more food, more sugar, more salt, and whatever we eat, we will not get the signal from our body that we are satisfied. So therefore we'll
Mm-hmm.
have a tendency to eat a whole lot more. Just delaying sleep more than 10 p.m. has been shown to increase insulin, which means that we can become insulin resistant. That means we will end up with metabolic issues, we can develop pre-diabetes, we can eventually develop diabetes. So sleep itself is a factor in metabolic health, and it has been shown to play a very critical role in how much predisposition we have towards developing cancer of all forms. Female cancers like breast cancer are very much linked to long term sleep dysregulation. We can have a lot of hormonal issues because progesterone and estrogen start to tip into a chaotic state where maybe we can have an
Mm-hmm.
imbalance between estrogen progesterone, which means we'll have will develop things like PCOS, fibroids, endometriosis. So there's
Mm-hmm.
so much linked. Every single health condition, body, mind will go back to sleep in some way. So we
Mm-hmm.
cannot biohack our way to sleep. It is simply impossible. So that's why I will go back to say that if you don't do anything else, prioritize your sleep. There
Right.
is also evidence that, getting the same 8 to 9 hours of sleep, if it's after midnight, doesn't do the same thing for our body as getting that same amount of sleep earlier in the night. That has
Right.
also been proven several times over. So, which
Mm-hmm.
means really try to do 80-20, right? Like 80% of the time at least get to bed so you're asleep by 10 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
and then enjoy those random nights when you have to go out. That's okay. But for the most
Mm-hmm.
part, if you prioritize sleeping, you will certainly see a very big difference in everything you're trying to get over. I see it all the time where clients who have worked with other practitioners on reversing a diabetic state. Maybe they don't want to get on medication, so they worked with
Mm-hmm.
somebody and it's not really come down. But sometimes even health practitioners themselves don't prioritize the early bedtime. See, they may
Mm-hmm.
be saying that if you get sleep, it's enough, but we need to get that sleep earlier in the night if we want high insulin levels to come down. So, certainly, this plays a very big role.
This is really comprehensive, Deepa. Thanks so much. We've spoken about sleep. I guess another big angle, and we probably alluded to it earlier as well, is food. And I really like the way that you said, what are the top two, three things that you can do which will give you the most bang for the buck? So when it comes to food, if you could, tell us about things, two to three simple, practical things which could be done, which would have the most positive effect on one's health, what would those be?
Oh, it's absolutely simple for me to list this. One is don't delay your meal time.
So, one of the questions that I wanted to check with you on was what are maybe the top two, three things that you can tell our audience about changes that they can do in their food habits that would give them the best sort of bang for the buck?
I think that's such a great question because I feel everything is about simplicity. So we really don't need to go down the route of the complex things such as keto diets and so many things out there which can seem quite overwhelming to do for a lot of
Mm-hmm.
us. So if you ask
Mm-hmm.
me top three things, I would say one, maintain the same meal time every single day. So make sure that it's not differing day to day. And within
Mm-hmm.
that as well, I think it's important to see that don't do a very heavy breakfast, because we really don't have strong digestion in the morning. So you're just trying to kindle digestive strength. So, sort of a baby bear's breakfast, papa bear's lunch, mama bear's dinner. That's what we need to be
Mm-hmm.
thinking about, because lunch should be the main meal as close to 12
Mm-hmm.
o'clock as possible, because when the sun is over our head, then we also have the strength of digestion. Beyond that, I think no need to complicate things. For example, if we've grown up eating wheat, we don't need to go gluten free unless there's a celiac component or something like that. But these sort of diets have become so common today where everybody's
Mm-hmm.
gone gluten free. Then when you ask why are you gluten free, they just feel that that's what health is about. And I understand, because the practically the entire functional medicine world is about go gluten free for anti-inflammatory
Mm-hmm.
diets, and that's really not true.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody has a
Mm-hmm.
problem with gluten. So I would say, like,
Mm-hmm.
stick to eating warm food. So stick to eating food that is cooked. One of the things that really weakens digestion is eating a lot of raw foods. And then you
Mm-hmm.
weaken digestion, then what will happen is the wheat will cause a problem. But instead, if you stick to eating things which are cooked, you'll sort of nurture the digestive system. You should be able to widen your palate. So I would say regular meal times, try to eat
Mm-hmm.
what you've grown up eating, meaning stick to local and what your body has the code to digest, and then
Mm-hmm.
stick to eating cooked food over raw foods. I would say these would be the most powerful things. They'll sound very, very simple, but trust me, if you follow them for even a month, you'll see the world of difference in everything, in digestive health, overall health, sleep, all of it.
Taking a little bit of a left turn now, we've spoken about sleep, we've spoken about food. Personally, I think another key component of our well being is also how we are with our relationships. So, if you could talk a little bit about maybe in your perspective, what are the key blockers to a healthy relationship with a partner or a spouse? Let's talk about that first, and then maybe what are the things that one can do well so that a relationship with a spouse or a partner becomes really, really strong.
Well, it's a tricky question, because obviously we can do a lot, but if the other person is not meeting us in the same place, then it's certainly very
Right.
difficult. And I want to be
Mm-hmm.
sensitive of the fact that there are many people in relationships where they want to bring their best version, but maybe the other person doesn't want to. So we
Sure.
can't all do it.
Yeah.
That said, I
Mm-hmm.
think if you ask me, what is, having been somebody who's gotten divorced and married again and who's now in such a good relationship, I would say that my top thing I feel is, one, we allowing the other person to be who they are, not trying to shift
Mm-hmm.
that. Right? I
Mm-hmm.
respecting that they may have certain things that they would like to do without you, or you can do without them. So just allowing each person
Mm-hmm.
to do something that makes them really happy. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, following the same the other way around as well. The other thing that I feel works very well is that even if you don't hold in your words, if you have the freedom to express, yes, sometimes they can come out with anger, but not carrying it forward later. Just identifying that these two people were at that moment in time probably just letting out, venting out, and then not going back to
Mm-hmm.
dissect that in great detail. Right? Sometimes it's just a
Right.
temporary emotion. Not to go and dig
Mm-hmm.
into that and wonder about all that. So, letting it go quite as easily after an argument really works.
Right.
And then I think
Right.
having your own way to self soothe. For example, maybe
Mm-hmm.
the other person is going to say something that hurts us sometimes, or we may do it as well.
Mm-hmm.
But we all
Mm-hmm.
need something to go away and self soothe ourselves before reacting. 25
Right.
years ago, I used to tell my yoga students something that if you have an argument with your partner, instead of reacting, put your yoga mat, do an hour of yoga, and you see how what comes out will be very different after the yoga practice. So what I mean is that,
Right.
when things feel overwhelming, rather than go into you said this, I said this, go for a long walk, do a practice of yoga, do something by yourself, watch a movie you like, read a book, and
Mm-hmm.
then,
Mm-hmm.
whatever felt so overwhelming may just settle down after that. So, self soothing
Right.
practices is very important. Finding a way to gain our own equilibrium when we feel ruffled, so that we can then show up as a
Right.
better version of ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's very true. I'm thinking back to my arguments with my husband, and a lot of the time in the moment, it's just like a domino effect. One person is worked up, then you say
Yes,
something, and then you react, and then it just sort of keeps escalating. I guess taking the time to just get some distance, reconfigure yourself, and coming back to the
yes.
conversation can make a lot of sense. Thanks for this, Deepa. We've spoken, I think, of a lot of things which were not very obvious, but some things I think, like you also mentioned, are quite simple. They're probably also known. One of the things that I keep sort of thinking about is, there are certain things that are so well known. For example, don't look at your phone before you're going to sleep. The blue light is affecting your sleep, or smoking is bad for your health, or constant stress is not good for your health. People know these things, but there seems to be a big gap between knowledge and sustainable implementation. What do you think that gap is? Why do you think that gap is there? And how do you think one could try to sort of overcome that?
I think, this comes back to something which I keep telling every single one of my clients, and even on videos and everything, is that
Mm-hmm.
something I learned in the ashram like decades ago, where Swami Shivananda used to say, an ounce of practice is worth a ton of theory. And I keep reiterating this statement over and over again, where I say that, look, even if it's something as simple as committing to going to bed at 9 p.m., uh, rather than collecting information. And I know I have to sometimes tell clients that they've fallen into that information rabbit hole, where they're geeking
Mm-hmm.
out over the research, and this practitioner spoke about this research, and we are wasting so much of mind space by collecting.
Mm-hmm.
See, all of this, it's great when research comes up, it's great when it validates something, but I think that
Right.
if we keep falling into that hole of just jargon and collecting it, we are not going to move the needle anywhere. So for me, it's always
Mm-hmm.
that, hey, is it a small practice? Just that I need to move my body every day. So I just see that, okay, today it's yoga, tomorrow it's walking, maybe it's swimming, but just commit to that. Rather than going into the
Right.
research of how this time of exercise is better than this time. Hey, when you look into the small aspect of life, it's not important about these research about one specific thing. It's about, can you show up and do it yourself. So it is
Mm-hmm.
harder than, I mean, certainly it's easier for us to gather all this knowledge and do nothing about it. So I tell everybody, stick this statement in front of you, put it on your phone: an ounce of practice is worth a ton of theory. So really, it's
Right.
about, if you were to compare yourself today and maybe you implement just one thing to your life and see how you feel. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
has been spoken by many people even about comparing when we say research validates, even listening to the cues from our own body's feedback is a form of research, right? When we learn to
Mm-hmm.
be
Yeah,
intuitive,
absolutely.
when we learn to listen to what something has done for us positively or negatively. So I think we just have to, it all comes down to simple um, slowing down the nervous system. Keep in mind that when we are sympathetic, dominant, fight or flight, our tendency will be to gather, gather, gather and not practice at all. So it also comes back
Mm-hmm.
to the state of imbalance that makes us gravitate towards this collecting things and not implementing. Which is why I think
Right.
one of the first things I have my clients begin is just oiling their body once a week, because just simple oiling abhyanga will lower the cortisol, and then you will be surprised that by doing this simple practice, suddenly you're able to commit to more things. So I think we can't really go into behavioral aspects, because as long as the system is overactivated, even our behavior is going to be different. That's why I say, okay,
Right.
begin wherever possible, right? Just soil your body and go for a shower, because this is going to be
Mm-hmm.
a domino effect. So anything good that you introduce is going to slowly make other things better for you.
Right. Thanks, Deepa. I mean, I personally found, I think, a ton of inspiration from talking to you. Lots of great points that we've covered. Thanks a lot for all your time here.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. It was a great conversation, and I hope it makes people move the needle a little bit.
So much for tuning in. I look forward to your comments and feedback. Before you go, can I ask for a favor? If you like the show, would you consider subscribing? It's an easy way to support us, and we promise to keep doing what we're doing and try and do even better. Thank you.